Hi, I'm Eduarda, and I'm here to share with you my experience inside Love Addicts, which is an online therapeutical program specifically designed for people like me who live with anxious, insecure attachment. A little disclaimer: Love Addicts is not sponsoring these videos, and I'm only here to share my experience and not the contents of the program. I do hope that my journey can help someone else out there. Let's go. So in week 11, I was really nervous because I was almost hitting the 3 month mark. And I had only gone maybe a third of the way in the courses. I was really, really busy. And I had that feeling of like, "Ugh, I wish I had done more by now." And that was like in all areas of my life as well. When I joined the program 3 months, like nearly 3 months prior to like hitting the 11-week mark, I had set like a bunch of goals in other areas of my life. Like I thought by this point I would have finished the course that I was on, which was, like another course for something else. But then they actually extended the course. So I was still on the course. I thought that I would have found like the perfect job, and I hadn't yet. And I was just interviewing and feeling very stressed. Um, there were a bunch of things that I wanted to have achieved, not only inside Love Addicts, but outside of it by this point. And I felt like time had passed and I had put in so much effort, not only in Love Addicts, but in life. And the date had come when I thought like, oh, I'm going to be almost ready by now. And I wasn't. So there was a little bit of like frustration because things were happening slower than I had hoped. And as far as Love Addicts goes, I decided I was going to extend my time in it because I was like, I really love the platform. I love the advice that I get. I love everything that I'm learning. I love everything that I'm learning about myself because of the program. And I really want to finish these courses that they have. So, like, I decided to extend my time, but also I sort of made a plan in order to go through the courses a little bit faster. The plan did not work. I still like, at one point, I stopped planning because I was like, this is healing, this is subjective, this is emotional. And the only plan that I had at one point, I don't know what week this was in because I then stayed 3 more months in Love Addicts. So instead of doing the program in 3 months, I did it in about 6 months, maybe even a little more. I'm gonna have to check this. But basically, I came to a point where I stopped being so hard on myself. And but by week 11, I was like, I'm extending my time. I'm making a plan so I can get through all the courses in like the next month. I want to like, I haven't finished it in 3 months, but I can finish the program in 4 months. And still being quite hard on myself by week 11. Like I would start relaxing and being nicer to myself way, way ahead. But one goal that I set for myself in week 11 was to stop fantasizing and creating unrealistic expectations because I through the program I became conscious of how I used fantasies in as a coping mechanism and as a way to protect my psyche and protect myself from feeling negative emotions. That's when it hit me, because in therapy, for example, I'm always told, like you have to feel your emotions. And Love Addicts, through all the exercises, like I always felt like week by week, I was being more authentic with myself about what my emotions were, and I was able to like feel my emotions a little better. And like I always say, like I always found that so strange, to like have to like actively feel your emotions because emotions just hit you and you just feel them. And like sometimes I wish I didn't because like when you're hit by a lot of negative emotions all at once, you're like, ouch. And but then I was like, oh, So, one of the ways that I push away negative emotions is by fantasizing about the future being better, right? So, I would have fantasies that were a way of me making the wrongs of the past right. Like, oh, like all of this stuff happened in my past and it was really not nice, but then if in the future all this other stuff happens, then it's okay. Then all this new stuff happening in the future makes the past okay. Or I would have fantasies that where I would be validated and approved by other people. Like, oh, if I can imagine that maybe in the future I have like this amazing job doing whatever that is something that someone else would think it's cool, then I would get their approval and I would get their admiration for being in that job. So I would fantasize about having a job that maybe I didn't even actually want or wouldn't even enjoy doing, but I would have all these fantasies about like what my life would look like, um, and how certain people that I wanted approval and validation from would approve of me and validate me because I was now in this job, because I was now having this lifestyle, because I was now doing whatever. So I became very conscious that my fantasies were a defense mechanism. I decided that I didn't want to use that defense mechanism anymore. I decided that I wanted to face reality. I decided that I wanted to keep my feet very firmly on the ground, and also that I wanted to stop seeking approval and validation, even if it was in fantasyland, because it does translate to your life. Like you're fantasizing about things and it's all fantasies and it's just, to make you feel better. But then those fantasies start becoming goals and they start becoming plans. But if you're not very watchful, or at least for me, I wasn't being watchful of what those fantasies meant, that I was actually trying to soothe myself with them and I was trying to fix the past with them and I was trying to seek the approval and love and validation that I wanted from people through them. And but it wasn't real life. And it was leading me to make plans to do things that I didn't really want to do. So the first step with that was I had to become conscious of when I was fantasizing and then catch myself and stop myself. But just stopping a fantasy, if you've had the habit of like a lifelong habit like me of fantasizing as a defense mechanism, it's very hard to just stop it. And funnily enough, I love writing fiction. And I think even my love for writing comes from a need of having to escape reality to a level where you're like literally creating stuff that is better than your reality, to have better emotions, to like almost fabricate soothing and positive emotions through the fantasy or through writing fiction in a way that you don't have to suffer so intensely with the emotions that you actually have about the things that happen. But I decided I didn't want to do that anymore. I still love writing fiction, but I didn't want to be fantasizing in my head day to day anymore. And so I became conscious of it. I started catching myself doing it. I started stopping myself. And the way that I was able to stop myself was to ask myself each time, like, what do you actually want? Like, what negative emotion are you trying to push away by creating this fantasy of like an alternate reality to what you're actually living? And every time I asked that question, I would learn more about myself. So, like, okay, this fantasy has the purpose of um, compensating for something really bad that happened in the past or something that felt really bad to me. This fantasy is serving the purpose of me not having to face the fact that I don't feel good enough. This fantasy is serving the purpose of me feeling loved when I don't, or me feeling connected to other human beings when I don't feel connected, when I actually feel very alone, I feel very rejected. So then I'm like creating these fantasies where I am loved and accepted and I'm connecting on like different levels to people. And I started sort of like separating, okay, like what parts of these fantasies are completely unrealistic and all that they are actually doing is putting pressure on me to achieve them, because like I would get my fantasies mixed in with reality and they would become goals and plans. So some of the fantasies, even though they were a defense mechanism, they gave me loads and loads and loads of anxiety, because I was like, okay, if I want to be like this super powerful rich woman, that I need to study all these things and have these jobs. And then I was like, okay, what is actually achievable? Like, what do I actually want? Or what is someone else's dream that I am like importing into my own head because I want their approval? I want them to be near me. What are my actual goals? What are my actual dreams? What do I want? Like, where do I want to be in a couple months from now, in a year from now, in 2, 3 years from now, in 5, 10? And what is achievable? Like, what do I want to focus on? What do I want to give my energy to? Because parts of those fantasies were actually real goals that I have and real dreams that I have. So I didn't want to lose those, but I had to like pick them away from all of the other clutter that was just me trying once again to like fix the past or push away negative emotions. And obviously a lot of the questions were like, what are the negative emotions that I'm pushing away? And then the process of like being firm in reality and like having my feet on the ground was like, okay, so you don't want to look at, you know, stuff that actually happened. You don't want to accept that it happened. You don't want to deal with it, but like, let's look at it. So I started looking back at both my recent past and like some things even farther back in the past, and looking at them for the first time where I'm like, okay, this happened. It was horrible. It felt horrible. It still feels horrible. I'm still not over it, or I still haven't been able to process this. And just, and when you're like not covering that up with fantasies, or at least for me, this happened, I really had to face like how horrible I felt about those moments in my life that it didn't go my way, or when bad things happen. And all of a sudden, I was hit with a lot of regret, a lot of frustration, a lot of guilt, a lot of anger, a lot of blame, a lot and a lot and a lot and a lot of sadness. So much sadness that I had after I made this decision in week 11. And I like, thankfully, I had extended my time in the program. I had so many low moments, like crying in the middle of the day, closing my curtains and just like going to bed at like 2 p.m. and not getting up again until 6 p.m. and just feeling like all I could do was like cry and sleep. And then like I would maybe get up and like take the dogs out, or and feed the dogs or something. But then I would like come back to bed at like 8 p.m. and I would sleep from like 8 p.m. until like 8 a.m. the next day. And it's, like like it felt like depression and it felt like low moods. And sometimes I would think, like, what is the purpose of all this, and what is life, and who am I? And like, like, had to confront all of the mistakes that I made. I mean, probably not all of them, but like a lot of them came to my mind, and just like all of the times that I abandoned myself, all of the times that I hurt myself, and then also all of the times that I let other people hurt me, or that other people like simply hurt me even if I didn't let them. And I kind of like relived a lot of that, because like memories start like coming back. And thank God, I had Love Addicts, I had my buddy inside Love Addicts, I had the video courses, because as I continued listening to the video courses, I was able to sort a lot of this out, because I think there were also moments that I felt pretty hopeless. And that to me is very hard to feel, because when I'm hopeless, I don't really want to get up in the morning and do things. I don't really want to achieve anything. Like everything sort of loses meaning. So I had a lot of moments where like things lost meaning, where I felt pretty hopeless. But then, through the courses in the platform, and through and at that point I reached out to my buddy a lot, and I would say, like, this is what I'm feeling. And then, she would respond, um with something, like, I'm here for you, or like, if you want to talk about it. And a lot of times we did jump on a call and talk about things that were difficult. So yeah, so that was a goal that I set for myself in week 11, that I think I probably achieved, like, maybe, like, I achieved, like, stop fantasizing. Like, this is just not something that I do anymore. When I do start doing it, I cut it off right away. um and I think it took me about 3 months to, like, get my mind reprogrammed, where instead of going off into fantasies, I look at reality and I face reality. And these days, I feel like I can go through negative emotions with a bit more grace. Um, Instead of, like, just going into a more depressive mood, I'll even, like, plan for, like, downtime, like, oh, this is happening, this doesn't feel good, like, maybe I'm in a difficult moment right now in the present, maybe I can foresee something in the future happening that isn't going to be that easy. Or maybe, I'm just, like, having a week or a couple of weeks where I'm being hit with a lot of memories from the past, and I'm realizing I have emotions to work through still. I, like, schedule more time for me, so I don't get to the point of being so overwhelmed with emotion that I need to, like, stop what I'm doing and, like, go hide under the duvet in the middle of the day, and just, like, like, having, on top of every negative emotion, having to interrupt, like, my routine. So I can kind of, like, notice when I'm needing more time, so maybe I'll finish the day a little bit earlier. I'll reschedule things for, like, the next week, so I can have, maybe a bath, or go to the gym, or more time to meditate, or, like, purposely take a nap. But then I'll be like, I'll make my whole room really nice for the nap, and, like, I'll light a scented candle, and I'll have, like, a special snack waiting for me when I wake up from the nap. And I won't have anything scheduled, so I can, like, wake up from the nap and just be very spontaneous. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go on a walk, I'm gonna enjoy the sun, or if it's rainy, I'm gonna enjoy the rain. And if I feel like I want to watch a movie, I'll watch a movie. And if I feel like I want to be, quiet in my room reading a book, I'll do that. So, like, I've learned to, like, see when negative emotions are coming, and, like, preparing, giving myself space to deal with them in a more pleasant way. Obviously you can't always do that, but, like, you can a lot of the times. And I think I'm able to do this because if I'm not fantasizing and pretending that everything is okay, or, like, trying to find happiness, like, in a future moment, then I'm much more aware of what I'm feeling right here, right now. And the last thing I want to say about fantasizing is that for me, it was covering my inner critic's voice. There's a lot of talk about inner critic, and the parts of the self inside Love Addicts, which is something that I love. I didn't know a lot of details about this, and now I do, which helps me a lot understand myself when I think of the parts of the self. And I had never thought of myself as being someone that had a very harsh inner critic. But then what I realized is that my fantasies were maybe even produced by my inner critic, or that my inner critic was interfering with my fantasies, because it was a way of my inner critic saying to me, like, you're not good enough, everything that you're doing is not good enough, everything that you've done in the past is not good enough, your life is not good enough, everything is a mess, you need to be better, you need to be perfect, you need to be on a whole other level that you're not at. Let me give you a fantasy so you know what to strive for. Because my fantasies were pretty unrealistic, not only about other people and situations in life, but also they were very unrealistic about how much I can achieve and even how much I need to achieve and how much I need to do. Like in my fantasies, I was like the super person that can do everything all the time, and achieve everything. And I needed to, like in all those fantasies, I needed to achieve a lot, a lot, a lot in order to be happy, in order to be okay, in order to be stable, which actually meant like in order to be validated and approved. Because for me, anxious attachment means that I need to seek validation and approval in order to feel safe and happy. And in order to get that validation and approval that will lead me to security, I needed to impress a whole bunch of people. And I needed to have a whole lot of money. And I needed to do a whole lot of things. So that, I think that was my inner critic telling me that I wasn't good enough. That is the conclusion that I sort of come to. I might be wrong, but it kind of feels like that. I do really think that it was at least hiding the voice of my inner critic, because now I can hear it a lot better when it says like you're not good enough, you need to do more. You're not, you're not going to achieve this because you you are so insufficient, because you haven't studied enough, you don't have enough experience. Like I always had like this voice in my head saying like, do more, study more, achieve more, because you need to have this amazing CV, you need to have this amazing life in order for anyone to want to hire you, in order for anyone to be want to be in a partnership with you, in order for anyone to be in a romantic partnership with you, you need to do more, be more, do more, be more. And now I can see how the fantasies were produced from that place of like, this is what it looks like to achieve everything. This is what it looks like to have everything. This is what it looks like to be perfect. And I kept fantasizing and wanting to achieve those fantasies and driving myself insane in the process. So now that I don't have the fantasies anymore, I can hear when my inner critic says this, and I can say back to my inner critic, no, actually I'm okay, or no, actually I don't want to do that, or interesting, I do want to achieve that and I do want to learn this or whatever, but not in a day and not in a week. Like I want to take my time with it, and I want to enjoy the process. So yes, so that was my week 11. I'll see you in the next video for week 12, which should have been the final video and final week in Love Addicts, but it wasn't. So I'll tell you a little bit more about like extending my time in Love Addicts and what I did afterwards.